Former CNN host and independent journalist Don Lemon pleaded not guilty to federal charges stemming from his coverage of a protest at a Minnesota church last month. Now, Lemon was one of several people indicted for their alleged roles in disrupting a service at St. Paul where an ICE official was a pastor. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche says Lemon violated worshipers' right to freely practice religion when he entered that church. Lemon spoke after his hearing and had this to say.
For more than 30 years, I've been a journalist, and the power and protection of the First Amendment has been the underpinning of my work. The First Amendment, the freedom of the press, the bedrock of our democracy. The events before my arrest and what's happened since so that people are finally realizing what this administration is all about. The process is the punishment with them. And like all of you here in Minnesota, the great people of Minnesota, I will not be intimidated. I will not back down. I will fight these baseless charges.
Let's go live now to St. Paul, Minnesota, and CBS News correspondent Lilia Luciano. Lilia, thank you for being with us. You were inside that courtroom. Can you tell us what happened?
Hey there, Liz. Yeah, the hearing started promptly. There were several defendants, not just Don Lemon. Most of the protesters who showed up in that church and who organized that protest in January 18th. As you know, there's another independent journalist who's also undergoing the same process. Her arraignment is next week on Tuesday. Don Lemon showed up with both of his attorneys. What's interesting here is he has one of his attorneys, Abby Lowell, who's been with him since the beginning of this process. The other attorney joined his legal team just a few days ago. This person has recently resigned from the very office that is now prosecuting Don Lemon. He served there as a federal prosecutor, and he resigned in part in protest regarding the investigation over the killing of Renee Good and how the Department of Justice was seeking not to investigate that killing, but rather to investigate her widow. So that I thought was very interesting, that he had both of those attorneys by his side. He pleaded not guilty, importantly, as have the other defendants in this case. We also learned that DHS still has Don Lemon's cell phone, the one that they took from him. And the judge said, look, if there's nothing else of value to your case, he told the prosecutors, the federal prosecutors, that phone should be returned. They said that they're still going through it, that they had an order to search the phone, and that they don't really have a timeline as for when they can return the phone. We are unsure about what is next in terms of dates, but look, we have consulted legal experts, constitutional experts, and they all say this is an extremely rare, some have said unprecedented, kind of charge for a journalist. Don Lemon, throughout that stream that he carried out before, during, and after this protest, insisted that he was not there in the capacity of a protester, that he was there as a journalist. But Don Lemon aside, even the case against the protesters themselves is extremely rare. The FACE Act, which is what the government is using to charge these protesters, was created in the mid-90s to prosecute people who interfered in women's access to abortion clinics. It is expanded in its language to include places of worship. The only case where I've found so far, just doing the research, of course I'm not an attorney, but have asked attorneys where it was used against protesters, was just last year against pro-Palestinian protesters who went to protest at a synagogue. But it is extremely rare to use this FACE Act in the case of places of worship to protect people's right to freedom of religion. What the attorneys for the defendants are saying, including especially Don Lemon's, is that it is their freedom of speech, both in the case of the protesters and in the case of Don Lemon and the other independent journalists. It is their freedom of speech, both First Amendment rights, that is being infringed upon, that is being violated by the government in these charges.
Lilia Luciano, thank you so much for that.